Advanced Micro Devices, or AMD for short, one of Intel's largest rival, just reported earnings on the 2nd of May and its stock price dropped by more than 8% post-earnings call. So does this make AMD a buy today? In today's video, I'll be breaking down AMD's Q1 2023 earnings and try to explain the reason behind AMD's drop to ultimately answer the question, should we be investing in AMD today? So first off, prepared remarks by the management team. In the first portion is the remarks by CEO Dr. Lisa Su. We executed very well in the first quarter as we delivered better than expected revenue and earnings in a mixed demand environment. We launched multiple leadership products and made significant progress accelerating our AI roadmap and customer engagements in the quarter. Longer term, we see significant growth opportunities as we successfully deliver our roadmaps, execute our strategic data center and embedded priorities, and accelerate adaptation of our AI portfolio. So from the prepared remarks by CEO, we can already have a hint that AMD is in a better financial position compared to Intel, which is currently experiencing a huge drop of revenue and a negative EPS. And next we can see that AMD's priorities lie in their AI and embedded business units, which is a contrast to Intel because in addition to their data center and AI business unit, Intel is placing a lot of focus on their IFS, Intel Foundry Services, in order to regain their status as a semiconductor powerhouse. And the next segment is comments made by AMD EVP, CFO, and Treasurer John Hu. Our strategic important data center and embedded segments contributed more than 50% of revenue in the first quarter. For the second quarter, we expect sequential growth in our data center and client segments, offset by modest declines in our gaming and embedded segments. We remain confident in our growth in the second half of the year as the PC and server markets strengthen and our new products ramp. So not much surprise here as a lot of semiconductor companies have come out and say that they are seeing a recovery in the second half of 2023. So I will continue to monitor these semiconductor companies to verify if this recovery is indeed true. So before I dive into AMD's earnings call for Q1 of 2023, notice how AMD dedicated an entire page of their earnings call to talk about the AI products that they offer. So this tells me two things. Number one, AMD is laser focused on delivering good AI products, but more importantly, AI is quote unquote the in thing for investing right now, and I'll be very careful of valuations of company that sells AI products or have AI in their name. And AMD is no exception to this. AMD is currently trading at a huge premium relative to their revenue. So moving on to their Q1 2023 numbers, we can see that AMD's revenue saw a 9% decrease from $5.9 billion to $5.4 billion, and they have attributed this drop mainly to the lower client segment revenue. And notice here that AMD actually talked about the Xilinx acquisition because for Q1 of 2023, it includes a full quarter of Xilinx compared to a partial quarter in Q1 of 2022. I believe that if Xilinx was fully acquired in Q1 of 2022, the revenue for AMD would have been much higher and the decline would be much steeper. Okay, moving on, you can see that the gross margin for AMD dropped from 48% to 44% on a GAAP basis and 53% to 50% on a non-GAAP basis. What is more interesting is their earnings per share, or in this case, loss per share, because I believe that this is the first time AMD has seen a loss per share in many quarters. So EPS for AMD dropped from 0.56 cents to negative 0.09 cents. And once again, they have attributed this drop to the client segment performance and the amortization of acquisition-related intangible assets. So I believe that these assets that AMD are talking about are the intangible assets related to their Xilinx acquisition. So AMD actually breaks down their business into 4 business units, namely the data center, client, gaming, as well as embedded. Notice that only embedded saw an increase in their revenue year over year, while the other 3 business units saw a decrease in their revenue year over year. So the increase in revenue for the embedded business unit is attributed to the fact that AMD have parked their Xilinx acquisition under this business unit, and hence a lot of growth in terms of their revenue is attributed to Xilinx acquisition and it's not organic growth. Okay, moving on to the details in terms of revenue and operating margin. We have the first business unit, the data center business unit. Revenue is flat year over year, whereas the operating margin has seen a huge decrease from 33% to 11%. So this is a cause of concern for us investors because the data center has been a key revenue driver as well as a high gross margin market. So AMD has come out to say that this is due to a product mix as well as increase in R&D investment. So to get a full picture, we need to look at NVIDIA's quarterly report as well as AMD's own report over the next few quarters. The next business unit, the client segment, also saw a huge decrease with revenue dropping from 2.1 billion to 0.7 billion and operating margin dropping from 33% to negative 23%. However, this is not a surprise as we are in one of the largest semiconductor downturns, and AMD's largest rival, Intel, also saw a similar trend. So nothing too concerning for me over here. Next, we have the gaming segment, which saw a decrease in revenue from 1.9 billion to 1.8 billion and operating margin dropping from 19% to 18%. Again, nothing too out of the ordinary for this business unit. And lastly, we have the embedded segment. So the embedded segment saw an increase in revenue from 0.6 billion to 1.6 billion and operating margin increased from 46% to 51%. And as mentioned earlier, a large part of this increase is due to inclusion of full quarter of Xilinx. However, I still believe that this segment is a key revenue driver for AMD in the long term as more businesses take up AMD, or in this case Xilinx products, in their own chips. Okay, moving on to the financial outlook of AMD. So notice here that AMD actually provided the outlook for the full year of 2023, unlike Intel, which only provided their guidance for the next quarter. So for the full year of 2023, AMD expects their revenue to grow, particularly in the data center and embedded segments, and they expect gross margin to increase in the second half of 2023. However, investors don't seem to be buying this good news, and I believe this is also the reason why AMD stock saw a huge decrease post earnings call. Look at this. For the next quarter, their revenue is expected to decrease by 19% year over year. This is a huge decrease, as Intel has actually come up to say that their revenue will see a slight increase year over year in the next quarter. And lastly, have a look at this. This is AMD's free cash flow for this quarter. It is still positive, which is a pretty good sign. Now, AMD themselves has come out to say that the free cash flow generated will be used to build up inventory in anticipation of the recovery in the second half of 2023. So as an investor, I'll be keeping my eyes peeled for the second half 2023's quarterly results of AMD. So in conclusion, AMD's earnings is pretty decent relative to the semiconductor industry, and they are spending their cash flow correctly and maintain a healthy balance sheet in this semiconductor downturn, which is unlike Intel as they are still spending heavily to turn around and they are being hit by this huge downturn. There are, however, some points that I would like to dig a little bit deeper before buying AMD at this price. So firstly will be their data center margin, which has seen a huge decrease from 33% to 11%. And I would like to find out if this is due to short-term economic headwinds or is something that is here to stay. And another point is that can the embedded segment maintain its strong growth in the long run because they have just purchased Xilinx in this quarter. And lastly will be something to do with price. So currently AMD is trading at around 100p at the time of making this video. I understand that this is a huge increase due to their negative EPS. However, this is still a huge premium for a company like AMD despite their strong balance sheet. So I would like to dig a little bit deeper to understand if this PE is something that can be justified for the long term. So overall, these are my thoughts on AMD's earnings. Thank you for staying all the way to the end of this video, and I hope to see you in the next one. Goodbye.